I wrote a bit of something in sort of my journey thus far in my own words. So I might kick us off and then we can just drive conversation from there.
Awesome.
Wicked, wicked. So my journey to better mental health. I got a bit creative with this, so bear with as I jump through some words here. At first, I noticed I was feeling something. It was like the early days of Earth, turbulent and unfriendly. I hadn't yet grasped how my emotions drive real-world actions, but I sensed something was changing. In a whirlwind of drugs, gym sessions, and letting people down, I realized I was the common denominator. I had the power to change outcomes through my own actions. This led me back to therapy where I met Carly. Carly and I worked extensively on awareness. We explored the underlying emotions behind my words, actions, and thoughts. As we delved deeper, I built greater awareness that translated into a calmer state of being through acceptance. She helped me slow down, make sense of my thoughts, teaching me to recognize the emotional currents beneath the surface. The key moments in my recovery weren't grand gestures. They were little things, like having people show up for me when I asked them to, getting help when I reached out, and receiving kindness when I couldn't give it to myself. These small acts of support were transformative, to say the least. Gradually, I started showing up more for others, investing my energy selectively. I helped with a renovation project. I drove 5 hours to see Thomas for a weekend. I attended a university presentation for my friend doing his master's in architecture, and I started going to Halloween events. Now, these actions, they might like seem small, but for me, they represented a significant shift in how I engage with the world and those around me. I gave myself the benefit of the doubt, embracing my creative side. I allowed my ideas to breathe like little cartoon angels and devils, each one a younger version of myself with a new thought. This openness led me to writing the two ebooks that I've now put out, with the latter, my therapist saying, being a comprehensive and approachable guide, which was very affirming for me. As I progressed, I stopped sweating the small stuff. It was like having a car with one engine instead of five. My emotional fuel lasted longer. This gave me more energy for things that lifted me up. People stuck around when I showed up for them. And I began to allow myself to just be and flow. A pivotal change came. Pivotal change was in how I handled difficult emotions. Instead of avoiding them, I started acknowledging them bluntly. I'd say to myself, I'm feeling anxious right now. Like I am right now, my heart's beating fast. I could feel clammy hands because, something like this is a bit nerve-wracking for me and it's not my best thing, but not the thing I'm best at. But I'm acknowledging that upfront. This mindful approach created space for my emotions to play out and dissipate rather than me trying to pretend it's not there, because that just made it worse. My hairdresser once told me she had a good feeling that I was going to change the world. At first, that was a very scary thought for me. I don't know how I could do that. But as I sit here now, I realize that by being more myself, by coaching others, by writing, by simply showing up, I'm creating these ripples of positive change and, in a way, changing the world. But here's the real kicker. It didn't get better because I could deal with the bad stuff. I was already really good at that. It got better because I finally had the capacity for joy, because I could ask for what I needed without shame. I stopped denying the part of me that said I deserve good things. That's how it got better. That's how I'm going to change the world. Not by conquering the darkness, but by making room for the light, by embracing both the challenges and the joys, by being present with others and myself, and by sharing the journey in hopes that it might help someone else find their way. I hope that resonates with you or someone you maybe know. My journey is my own. It might not look like yours, but yours is just as valid and important. Yeah, and don't be afraid to let the good stuff in. That's what I have.
Thanks for sharing. Quite a journey.
It's
Yeah.
been a wild one. Yeah.
Hands get sweaty just listening.
Oh my God, I was sitting in the theater and I was just like looking at the time and I was just like boof, boof, getting close. I was like, it's coming, it's coming.
The more you do them, though, the more you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, the easier it truly becomes. Like it's just a constant repetition of doing things that are uncomfortable that make you, feel things and be able to flow through emotions. And, even myself, I was always introverted growing up, like I still am. I like to keep to myself, but if you see the image that people see on the outside, they wouldn't expect that. They would say, there's no way he is. But it's just been a constant journey over many years of just putting myself in those uncomfortable situations and going, no, to get past it, you have to do it. You have to actually physically be in the moment and go, you know what, it's done. And then, I look at a lot of people and go, some people, speak things into existence and make them happen. And then other people have to do the action to then start believing it. And I'm one of those that I've got very self-belief that I can do things, but I like to actually execute and go, cool, now that I've done it, it's a lot easier to do. So appreciate you sharing, Robin. It's good to kind of hear your journey and what you've gone through. Definitely tough for you, but first step, right, is sharing and then going past it.
Yeah, I'm very much of the whole mantra of shame dies in the light. I've noticed the more I sort of bring things out and just talk to them about it, the less the less ashamed or like weird I feel about it. The more I'm like,
Yeah.
Human experience, human experience, human experience.
Yeah. And then you realize how many people actually align with what you're going through. Like so many, especially from a male side. That's what I recognize a lot. It's from men. And my background, I've been a people manager for 12 years, and the men are the hardest to acknowledge what they're going through, or struggles or personal development issues. And then they start seeing a strong figure in their own gender, and they go, well, actually, I'm not alone. It's normal. My manager can talk to me about things, or a friend, or a father, or whatever it is. So it's good that you're using your platform in a way to reach out to others, because no doubt there may be one person or 10 or 20 or 100 that align in some aspect of what you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you've been really good in terms of like that part of the journey as well. And I sometimes worry when I message you that I'm stressed. I'm like, oh my God, I've told him I'm stressed again. I hope I'm not annoying him with that.
It's been a joy of a journey working with you, Robin. It's been very good. It's been a short year and a bit. Yeah, time is
Oh my God,
flying.
right? It's just gone.
It's just gone.
And then you're leaving. You're going to another team. How dare you?
Yeah. Such are the joys of having exposure and ability to actually move. Yeah. I'm a people manager too, Logan.
Yeah. It's a different world when you become a people manager and you manage behaviors and emotions, and you realize people are not machines, and you've got to recognize that, humanize them. And
Yeah.
I love it though. Like for me, it's I learned from a manager when I first became a manager when I was I think I was 19 or 20, and he told me, you can't paint the same brush across everyone, so change your style based on their needs, and you'll do very well as a people manager. And that stuck with me for a very long time, still does to today, this 12 years later. And how I approach people is I just try and figure out what's going to work for them and to get the best out of them. And it's very interesting to once you get into that field.
Abhijit, we haven't met before, so I think it'd be good to introduce yourself and each other. I realized we didn't do that at the start. I skipped that. Fun fact: I did a university talk, the first one for Atlassian, and the first time I did, I forgot to introduce myself. I was too nervous. I just started talking.
That's fine. So I am originally from India. I moved to Sydney last year for an MBA degree at Sydney Uni, but my background for the last 6 years has been as a psychotherapist in India, and I've worked with maybe people dealing with depression, anxiety, relationship concerns, all of that. And the whole idea behind doing the MBA was to figure out how to build better mental health businesses. I have really missed being part of like the mental health community of sorts here in Sydney. So I'm actually really excited to be on this call and hear you guys talking about it. I also want to say that primarily my experience in mental health has been with a lot of women. So it's really nice actually to be the only woman on this call at the moment. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Cool.
I'm really grateful you're here as well. I like the
Yeah,
I want you to like
thank you
butt
for
in
having
with
me.
I want you to like butt in with the professional opinion as well, wherever you
Absolutely,
see
will
fit, because
do.
I really
Yeah.
value that part. Yeah, I talked to my own therapist. She said because like ethics and shit, she can't
Mm,
be on this
yeah.
because then the
Yeah.
relationship becomes too much like a colleague and less of a
Yes.
patient thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I really liked what you said about letting more light in rather than trying to get rid of the darkness, because I think if we look at anybody's life trajectory, our life is going to suck. There are going to be moments that don't go very well.
Mm.
I think that's been my mental health journey as well, that I've realized it's not a linear process as much as I'd like it to be. It's not like just a steady upward climb. There's going to be dips and there's going to be highs. But as much as we can find the things that maybe support us, that work for us, I think that makes a lot of the difference.
Mm. Mm. For sure, for sure. And I know I got all of you to like, well, I think most of you prepared something as well. If we want to go through those, we can. I think I want to hear those things because you spent good time on that. And I think that'll be cool to hear some stories that way. And then we have a bit of extra context and familiarity to drive. Yeah. So I guess we can start with, you're on my screen at the moment, Abisha, so we can start with you.
Sure, absolutely. Happy to. So like my mental health journey started when I was maybe 17. And I think besides experience, I think right now I can say that I was very depressed and very anxious, but I had no idea what it was at that age. And especially in India, it is getting talked about a little more than it was when I was younger, but back then it's not something that is discussed in your family. It's not something that's discussed in public spaces. And I was a psychology student back then. I was doing that as my undergrad degree. And I would go to the books, I would go to like the diagnostic manual, open it, look for depression, and I would find that I did not fit each and every box. And I would say, okay, maybe I'm not depressed, and maybe this is not what's happening to me. And I found that to be like an incredibly invalidating experience. And I think that's something I really wanted to share with people today, that you don't have to fit into a box if you're feeling a certain way. You don't have to fit into a diagnostic criteria if something is not feeling right. Um, I think I only realized that maybe like some 6 or 7 years later, that I could get help even if I was not clinically depressed or clinically anxious. Um, and there were also some signs that I think we don't talk about enough. Like, for example, I withdrew from friends and family. I would not be talking to them about what was going on underneath the surface. I looked very happy outside. I looked very content. I think there was a lot of loneliness in spite having a lot of people around me, feeling very alone in what I was experiencing. And also a lot of shame because I just felt like I had no reason to feel the way that I was feeling. There were certainly things going on at home. I've had a very difficult relationship with my dad and a somewhat okay relationship with my mom. But I just didn't feel like that was enough, considering that there were many people out in the world going through much harder things than I was. And I think the way that I coped with all of this was to really throw myself into being as occupied as possible. So finding a lot of things to do, work, uni, things outside of that, friends, and just keeping really, really busy. And I think it worked for a while. Like I think it worked for at least a few years until it started to manifest in a lot of physical health issues. So just like things were just not working with my body physically at all. And I think that felt like a wake-up call in a lot of ways. I realized that something is definitely not right. All this time, I was also studying to be a therapist. So if anyone here thinks that therapists have their shit together, they do not. I can tell you from first-hand experience, we're as fucked up as the rest of you. Um, but I did finally get help. I did finally talk to someone. And I think I remember the first session so clearly, where I really felt like I was finally letting someone perceive me. That's the only way I can explain it. Like really, really letting myself be seen. And I highly recommend that. It doesn't have to be a therapist, it doesn't have to be a professional. If it's someone you trust, if it's someone you know will be able to hold that space for you, I would strongly recommend you do that. I think it can obviously feel incredibly vulnerable. And I felt a little helpless as well in that
Mm.
moment. But I think there's just that little bit that you need to jump over before you get to the other side. And if you can do that, it's incredible. It's honestly the best feeling ever. Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. I think
Mm.
what I've learned over the years is finding, I think similar to what you said, Robin, like finding these few things that sort of keep you going. For me, it's been having, say, a solid routine. I tell everyone this, I'm so boring. By 8:45, I'm in bed and I'm reading a book and I'm sleeping by 10. But honestly, it just keeps me sane. I don't know what else to tell you. Um, Finding the people that I trust, finding like an exercise routine that works for me. Um, I think the biggest thing though with therapy that has helped is accepting or sitting with feelings. Therapists love to ask you how you're feeling, and there's a reason for that. It's because I think when you make space for these emotions that you cannot explain, that you cannot rationalize, that don't make any sense, there's just an expansion. I think you grow in a big way. And I think that's been the big thing for me, that like when I'm like you sort of like what you did on the call, Robin, when you said, okay, I'm anxious. And you didn't do anything. You weren't like, okay, it's fine, it's gonna be okay, it's all good. You were just like, I'm anxious. And I could see so much in that, just being able to call that out and sit with it. So I think that's something that I've learned to do over the years. I would say
Mhm.
I'm still in a space of growing and figuring things out. Like the move to Sydney, it's been amazing. I really love the city. It's been a little hard to find friends, to find community the same way that I did in India. And I think that's been the biggest challenge. But I feel like I have a really strong base or a really strong foundation to be able to deal with that or to respond to it. Yeah, that's
Mm.
that's
Mm.
me.
I really resonate with that, like that initial hurdle. Because for me, it was
Mm,
sort of the same thing. There was just at one point, I was like, oh, I should do something. And
yeah.
then just doing the first thing, having the first call with Carla as well. It was like just sitting there. It was very life affirming in a way to say, oh, look, I feel like this. She's like, okay, and just to sit there with me through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, really, really nice. It's highly recommended experience for me. Just the one thing that always sucks for people, I think, is therapy can be quite expensive, especially to
Yes,
do long
yes.
term. It's
Yeah,
I get why. I totally understand why it is what it is, but it
yeah.
it's part of what inspired my whole thing, where I want to, through the work and the content and the coaching that I do, is democratize that process a bit more to bring more
Mm-hmm.
people into that fold through more
Yeah.
accessible options. I understand I'm not a therapist. I don't sell that either. I don't want people to believe that I am that, but I don't think everyone potentially needs all of that. I think journaling and awareness for emotions and building out from there, just chatting
Mm-hmm.
about it once a week is already a lot for some people who've never had any sort of support.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a whole
I agree
industry building
completely.
around that layer, right? There's the personal coaches, which are not therapists, and they tell you from the get-go, I'm not a therapist. Right? If there's any signs, I will redirect you to someone who's actually a medical professional.
Mm.
I think
Indeed.
like I think there's tremendous value in obviously speaking to a professional, but I mean, you're right, it's not very financially accessible. I also think long-term psychotherapy is what seems to be far more effective, and not everyone can do that. But I think something like this, right? Like just sitting, hearing people talk about their experiences or sharing your own, having more community spaces, I think these can be equally valuable. Um, I definitely think it's not an individual responsibility for us to create these spaces. I wish there was more systemic government funding, things around that. I will not go into my activism mode right now. But I will say there are options out there. I
Mm.
wish there were more.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with the way the world has moved in a way to a more hyper individual society, it puts a lot
Yeah.
of that pressure on smaller family units to provide all of that community.
Yeah.
When it used to
Yeah.
be entire villages providing that community and support.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good
Something I
segue
really like about
into part of
Nepal.
my background. I can tell you more after that.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Um, look, I'll present myself first. So I'm Fernando. I've been Robin's manager. Really happy to be for a year and a bit. As fate would have it. Um, I I was very happy to join this call and get a little bit of my background because quite a few things that you've just said already resonated, right? Like dealing with the hard things, right? That's fine. Men struggle sometimes to open up and face a little bit of that emotion. Therapists love to talk about emotions, and making space for them. Um, and going to that first talk where you actually open up yourself and let the world see you. All those things resonate with me a lot because, look, background, I am white. I am in good height. I am. I have no disabilities. I come from middle, high class. I've had good studies and languages, which have opened the world to me since a very, very young age. I've had a very, in my eyes, a really balanced family with lots of opportunities. That's been great. Um, it's come with a lot of social expectations that I didn't know were there until they built up to a point that was not allowing me to accept that I could do anything other than do things right. And failure was really, really hard for me to face. Um, so my trajectory towards my declive was fun to watch from now, right? Um, I had a great partner. We met young. We started traveling. I started landing in a really good market. I started getting good jobs. We started traveling the world. I had two lovely kids, and I got hired by a blue chip company, paid to cross the world. Everything seemed like a dream, right? And I came over to Australia, landed here, and I started to feel so much fear. Um, we were at the other side of the world, just my wife and my two kids and me. She was far from her family, her friends, in a foreign country to her. She didn't speak the language. With a 4 months old little girl and a less than 2 year old child, both demanding a lot of attention. And she needed a lot of partnership with me. And I didn't have enough energy for that at that time. I had the hovering need to demonstrate that I could provide for the family. I could sustain this job, which if I lost, I had to pay more money than I had. Right, the whole family between her and me, we did not have enough money to pay back Atlassian for transferring us over here. That just would have put us in a very weird position. That was a year worth of mental stress building up, and I didn't acknowledge it. I just powered through it, and like I can deal with the bad. I'm just gonna go 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 go. Um, After that, it's like, okay, there's an opportunity to become a manager. Excellent, bring it on, right? Kept going for it, crossed the line, and over the next year, like my first year as a manager, I looking back, I don't even know how I sustained things there. Um, they were unsustainable. I lost my sleep. I was working 12 hours. My kids clearly demonstrated that they wanted a bit more of me. My wife and me were not in a good place. Um, and the day I got a bad performance evaluation from my manager, and my peer clearly came to me and said, I cannot work with you, that was like a ton of bricks. It crashed me down. Um, I had to really take a step back. My manager was supportive there. I thank him for the odd support he gave me at the time. I actually look back and he wasn't the best of managers, but at that time, he did what he had to do. And he gave me a bit of space. He pointed me in the right direction to get a bit of support from the company coaches. Um, and there was my first interaction with someone who actually started talking about emotions. and recognizing how I feel when I'm feeling something. Talking about the anger that I had built up in my day-to-day work, the silence I had built inside my house and in my relationship, the odd distance that I didn't want to have from my kids that I was building just to potentially protect myself from them, um, and started dealing with that. It was it was really eye-opening. Just starting from the basics. It's like how do you feel? Like try to keep a note of how you feel. Is it your shoulders? Do they scrunch up? Is it your throat? Do you stop talking? Right? Does your forehead start sweating? Right? Or is it your hands that clench? What is it? And starting to have that awareness, starting building a little bit that mindfulness in my day to day, really helped me see that this was actually something I could reverse, that I could make a lot of change for. And it's been 4 years maybe, and I've got so much journey ahead of me. I can still feel it, right? Every now and then, you feel like you're in a boat. I was in the abyss. I found a way to row back to the other side of the island, and every now and then the boat just drifts back to the abyss. But now I can see it, and we live in this balance where you can't live permanently in the good island. You have to tweak things and be aware of things, and I try to do that through reading books. There's plenty of books that have helped me lots, and these are books that I can recommend to people, and they likely won't receive them the same way I did, because books are one of those magical things, right? Depending on who reads them, when they read them, it comes in one way or another. But I found plenty of books that have helped me, and every now and then I just try to pick up another one to see if there's another point of view, or helps me look at things from a different angle, right? And I think the biggest things that I've been changing in the last few years are how I set expectations for myself and how I manage my time. The routines on time management and communication have just gone hand in hand. So being explicit with people around what I can and what I can't do, being explicit with my partner about what I want for myself, for her, for both of us together, for the kids, and trying to build together collaboratively a plan that makes space for those things, even though sometimes it's impossible. And you have to have those trade-off conversations, and you have them, right, in opening that space for those things to happen. It's a long journey I've got ahead of me, but I feel I'm in a much stronger space than I was 4 years ago. I was telling my wife today, like, I feel I've come so far, and in turn, as a people manager and a father and a husband, right, and a friend, I think it's put me in a position where I can better have conversations with people and openly say, I have no clue how to help you, right? What do you think, right? And just open up that space for talking. And yes, I'm no therapist. I've been winging it for myself, right, the best way I can. But it's really built strong relationships with people of very, very different needs. Some people have been smashing it all around me. Some people have been struggling, and some people I've had to say goodbye to. It's it's helped in all those situations, I feel.
I mean, I noticed it definitely in your management style with me and the people around you. I think having worked with you and the direct experience I've had, I wouldn't be able to tell that you struggled at one point the way that you handle it now. Like we talk about it, we're like, how is Fernando across 50,000 different things? How does he before we know? I send you a link and you'll be like, oh yeah, I saw that. I'm like, how? It's impressive the shift and your journey to get there.
I have to say, I also really like the metaphors that everyone has used on this call about Fernando the boat going back into the abyss and pulling it back. And Robin, you talk about the car engine. I think those are incredibly powerful.
Awesome. Well, I guess I can introduce myself, Nick. So I've known Robin a little over a year now. We are associated with Strom Sports Down Under. So yeah, so he's sort of met me through there. Bit of my background on my personal side. Grew up doing martial arts from the age of 6 to 20. Competed overseas a lot. Was very pushed into it from a young age from my father, who used to do it as well. And then I thrived in that environment. So I really enjoyed the individual aspect and knowing that what I put in is what I got out, and wasn't really related to team environment. So very individual sports. Now, from my 20s or late teens to now early 30s, I've done competitive bodybuilding, and it's more or less the same. It was just an avenue to get myself stuck into and seeing like an output and getting an outcome from it, and going, if I put this effort in, it's all driven by myself. You've got support people around you, but in the day, it's down to you to get the result that you want. And I really liked that aspect of training and physical, mental health. Those things really helped me. So I, on the personal side, that's kind of my background. Work side, I've been in people management for 12 years-ish now. I work for quite a large company at the moment. Recently moved into a role where I'm organizational development manager, so looking after development of everyone in the company in New Zealand. So it's something that I really enjoy because I like seeing people progress and being able to help and nurture them in a way to progress and more or less just become well-rounded career individuals. And whether it be in the company I am now or have an aspect and part in going, help them grow in their whatever role they may do in the future, if it's in this company or wherever else. It's something that I enjoy. So doing that has been very fun and enjoyable, but with that comes a lot of pressure, and that's something that I think I thrive under pressure, but understanding and recognizing when it becomes too much. And that's probably where I align with Fernando a lot. It's something until it hits you head on, then you don't realize. And I think, for me, what I kind of learned was just, set your expectations realistically. A lot of people, if you get into a new role, if you get into a new company, you go 120% out the gate and you're like, go, go, go. And then that expectation is set to others, and then they expect that from you all the time. And, while you're giving 120%, when you drop down to 100%, they're like, oh, there's a performance gap, or there's an issue, what's going on? So learning how to balance that is really important. Like, when do I turn it on? When do I turn it off? Like, that's important for me. So, a big thing for me in my company now, I don't work weekends. I refuse. So there's, weekends are my time. I have my downtime. I like to, go at my own pace during the weekend. So if I want to sleep in, I'll sleep in. If I want to wake up early, I'll wake up early. I recognize that those 2 days in my week are really important for me to be able to perform at a high level. So those are sort of, when I look at my mental health journey, it's like setting some non-negotiables for myself to not go at like such a high level all the time. And then recognizing, what are the things that I can pick up and going, things are becoming too much. So for me, it's like if routine stops. So if I start going, oh, I'm sleeping a little bit earlier, longer during the week, or if I'm going a bit to bed a bit later, or maybe I'm a little bit behind on my meals or things like that, like just little aspects that to others may not seem a lot, but for me, of a creature of habit, if I start recognizing, yeah, these things are happening, then I'm going, okay, let's take a step back. What is causing these issues for you? Like, what's happening in your life? What have you taken on too much? So, if I take through my journey this year, I've battled with mental health a long time, ever since, and I'll probably go a little bit deeper so people can recognize it can come from many different aspects. But my mental health struggles came from a lot of family-driven pieces. Growing up, my mum had cancer twice, so dealing with that at a young age has stemmed a lot throughout. And then this year, my father got diagnosed with cancer, so kind of brought back a lot of memories to me. And then I sort of became that middle person of going, okay, trying to keep the family together, work a high level job, but then do all the things that I really enjoy with training and gymming, and realizing something's got to give. So where's your balance going to go? What's the priority right now? What family is going to be the priority? So let's pull back on the training a bit. Let's pull back on the amount of projects at work I'm doing so I can balance myself. But that's taken many years and still a struggle today. I still probably burn the candle at both ends a little bit too high all the time. And it's just, I think, for me, it's just like be the constant observer of yourself and observe the behaviors that you're exhibiting, and pause and stop and recognize moments before it cascades and becomes too much. And then, you may, I've had family members that have stayed in bed for weeks on end, not want to do anything because they've got to that point where it's a little bit too far. So yeah, that's probably what I can share, and where, my mental health journey has been. And, for me, it's like, I think from the outside perspective, people look at me, I'm a big guy full of tattoos. They would never expect, that person to go through things, but I like to show people it doesn't matter who you are. Everyone goes through something. And just hoping that someone can recognize it doesn't have to, it can be anything. Like Avisha, you said before, it can be small, it can be big, but to you, it's always going to be big. So maybe to the outside world, it might be small, but for you, your own personal mental health journey is big. And that's really important for me to share to others. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's affecting you in a bad way, it's important. So that's what I can kind of share.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that part you mentioned about like finding time for you to rest, to decompress, and just be yourself. Because if you don't have that space to just be, then you're playing a character all the time is not going to be sustainable.
You can't. You'll something will give. Like I've got an autoimmune disease, so when that flares up, I know, oh yeah, so I'm stressed. I've got too much going on. So that, unfortunately, that's a very good, easy sign for me. It's like my autoimmune disease has flared up. Cool, something's going on. But not everyone has that. But just recognizing, what are the little things that are unusual or not really happening or clicking in. Just I read probably everyone on here has read a book called The Power of Now. I really like that book. It's quite good. And one thing on there, it always talks about just being the constant observer of yourself and recognizing the moment. And if you're angry or frustrated or depressed or what, stand back, observe, and go, what is that thing that's making you feel that way at that time? And as soon as you can,
Yeah, you're touching on something really interesting here, and maybe Abhisha, you can give us a bit more insights here. But the recognition of state is something that's very hard. Like again, if you've lived through something, you can experience it and understand it, right? You've been cut by a knife, you know what a cut feels like. You can replicate that in your mind without feeling it, and you can forecast it and foresee it, right? Or even see it coming, right? And if someone cuts you with your blindfolded, you know what it is, right? But a lot of the times, and again, until it hits you like a ton of bricks, right? The first time, right? You don't know what it is. Or again, we grow up without having people teach us about mindfulness and being present in the now and recognizing yourself and analyzing yourself. So put that together with what you said, right? You feel something. It's you who gives it value. And maybe the outside world looks at it and goes, it's not that bad, right? No, you're not depressed, you're fine, right? It's just you're feeling something. Well, that's okay, right? How do people transition through that best?
I think something I was thinking when you were saying that was also what makes it hard to have that awareness in the moment. I like to view a lot of things through a lens of like how our nervous system responds to things or to events around us. And we've all heard of like fight, flight, freeze, that response that you have to stressful situations, right? And when your body's in a stressful situation, it needs to use all of its resources, all of its energies to what it thinks it needs to do to protect you. And that means it's not going to send any energy or any resources to like the thinking part of your brain or the part of your brain that's like more measured, more logical, more rational. It's going to send it. That's why you maybe feel restless sometimes. That's why your heart starts beating faster. It's preparing your entire body to mobilize, to fight, to run away, to like maybe deal with what's happening. And so I guess my first thing is like how are you creating safety in your life? How are you creating moments where you feel secure, where your body is not always entering these zones? And sometimes the smallest thing can trigger it. Like it doesn't have to be like a serious, like big accident. It can be if you've had a lot of struggles growing up in your family, it can be an argument with your partner at some point that triggers it. So I think the first step is being able to create safety, to be able to create resources that are incredibly grounding for you, where you feel very secure, and then work. I think that after that is when awareness can come in. I do think a lot of it is created in the security of a safe, healthy relationship. That's why
Hmm.
therapy works. But that's why communities work so well. When we have each other, when someone can reflect back to us what they're seeing without making us feel threatened and without making us feel unsafe, I think that can be powerful.
I,
So,
I tend to agree with what you're saying. Like, one of the things that I think works really well is, if you're having like if you take a partner and you're having disagreements with a partner or fights, like doing it in an environment away from your home is beneficial, because otherwise
yeah,
you associate your home with that fight or that argument
yeah,
or that moment. So, for me personally, if I'm frustrated or annoyed, I'll go for a walk. Like, I like to go outside, go down to the park, just walk around and try and recognize it there. I don't want to sit in the environment that may have caused it, or because then it always just comes back. You're starting to associate things with feelings, and you're going, oh,
yeah,
I'm in this room, I feel this way because of this room.
yeah.
So that helps me personally. I don't know, I'm not a therapist or anything like that, but I just go through experience of like trying to disassociate feelings with places. Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree. I think nature can also be incredibly healing, like spending time in nature, animals, all of these things as well, very safe for our bodies.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously you're saying everyone should get a dog or a cat. That's the
Yeah, I was about to
You
say
know,
that's why I want
yes,
a cat.
I would highly recommend that. I haven't gotten one yet because I'm not sure how long I'm going to be in Sydney, but the minute I know we're getting a
yeah.
dog.
I think we'll put you to the tenancy people in New Zealand. Just say, oh, it's mandatory for every household to have animals.
Absolutely.
For our mental health.
But no, you're right. You're right on the animal thing. It definitely helps. Like, it's
Mm.
because it's unconditional love. Like, they
Yes.
look at you and they love you no matter what. So
Yeah. My cat didn't judge me the one time I did acid, and I really wanted to pet its fur, and it felt wildly good. No judgment there, so I was like, that's all I need.
So healing.
Oh, it actually is. Yeah, it was like he doesn't give a shit. He's like, oh, if I want to be here, I'll be here. I think cats are great in that sense because if they're there, they want to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey
I have
Sam, I just noticed
mhm.
that we're all of us are having a chat here, and it's lovely. But if you want to chime in, feel free.
Sam. Was this for Sam?
That was for Sam.
Ah, it was for
Just
Sam. Okay.
opening the space in case Sam wants to chime in with anything.
I'm enjoying just watching. I'm chilling. Just want to Robin's friends.
Easy.
This has been good time.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
No, it's okay.
I have one question that I actually got from a follower that I think would be fun to finish up on, because it'll take the time nicely. How have we each dealt with a lack of meaning in life? And has existential anxiety ever been something that any of you have had to work and deal with?
Bloody hell. That's that is one of the best, hard questions that one can throw at any human, right? Existence.
That's a toughie.
Yes. Yes. Is there an answer to that? I don't know. I like to have beers every now and then at Atlassian with with peers that I consider very open-minded. We have very silly conversations about what the universe is and where we're going and where we come from, and it gets very philosophical. It's really good fun. It always takes on really deep tangents. Sam, you want to repeat the Sam's asking for the question again?
Oh, I can put it in chat as well in case you want to read it. That might make it easier. There you go.
There you go. Look, meaning, I don't know. In my eyes, meaning, the meaning in life maybe is thinking about things too far. For me, in my head, I can't think of my whole life. I can think of the meaning of now. We've had this conversation. There's meaning to it. There's meaning to the hour and a half I'm going to spend this afternoon with my family. I know it's building blocks and small details that are building for the long term. I can think about the important things, not the meaning, the important things that have sustained me, like the pillars, right? They will keep me going through life. And if I'm in a really good place and you want to talk about when I'm dead, right? And I look back and I try to think of legacy and I try to think of meaning of legacy, then maybe I can have some thoughts, but they're very vague, very, very vague.
Yeah. I think it's trying to think too far ahead is where you can get caught up in what's happening, and just being more present and thinking about what's happening today. And I always for me, it's like the past is the past. It's happened. You can't change it. So try not dwell on it because it's happened. It's there for eternity. You're never going to do anything about it. The future is never certain. You can't say. You can say, "Oh, I've got work next week," but you can't say exactly what's going to happen at work and what the results are going to be from it. But you can confirm what you're doing today. So trying to be more present in the moment and just existing for now is important. And I think that's where you can spiral a bit when you start thinking too far ahead and set these expectations. How many people have heard, you should have been married by 25, or you should have kids by 30, or you should, these society norms that have been pressured onto people of accepting that should happen. It's just not quite the case. I think everyone, just as we talked about, your mental health is individual, and it's equally as important as everyone else's journey. Your life and your existence is individual. So you may be married tomorrow, or you may be married in 10 years, or you may not be. It's down to you. Yeah. That's my opinion.
There's
No, I
a
really hope that.
do we know the I can't remember his name right now. The Hero of a Thousand Faces. Do we know that? I can't remember the author of that book, but what he said was, everyone enters the forest in their own place at the point at which it is darkest. For if the path were known, it is not their path. I really like that. My therapist recommended me the hero's journey. Do you know that cycle of how the hero's journey goes? Yeah, my therapist
Absolutely.
gave that to me at a low point for me, just as and it was really funny because I went and found the book about it instead of realizing she was just meaning the theory of it. And so I went and read I started reading this book by a linguistics professor, because that's who wrote it, and it was absurdly out of my depth. But I think I got the gist of it after watching a YouTube video on it. And I think I think the meaning of life for me, and what I tell my clients as well, is just ride the wave. There's not a lot that's really in your control beyond how you react to things. You give meaning, you assign meaning to whatever you choose to assign meaning to, I think. And if you get too philosophical and deep into that, it kind of loses its magic in a way. So I think for me, I've gone to deep into philosophy and thinking about all of this really deeply, and I've realized that just thinking about it detracts from the experience of just living and being.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't
Debashi,
have an
yeah.
answer to that question. I think I do agree with a lot of what you guys have said, especially what you, Logan, said about not really anchoring your life around other people's versions of milestones or what makes sense for them. I think it's so important to just find what it is for you. Like, for example, I think my work gives me a lot of meaning and working with clients does. But for example, I was thinking about a friend who just being in nature, being surrounded by nature, being able to give back to nature and the earth in a way is very meaningful for them. And so if you can find that thing for you, which I guess you can only do if you experiment and you go out there and see what's out there for you. So, but no deep thoughts here.
I think as well as like, when like you start feeling these meanings, like I would say like it's like an aha moment, like a light bulb is like, and you're like, oh, that made me feel some kind of way. Like I had a good example the other week when my team realized I was promoted into a new role and I was moving from their team. One of them came up to me and said, he pulled me aside and he said, Logan, I just want to say that, without you being my manager, I wouldn't be where I am today. You've changed my family's life, my life, and given me a lot of purpose to what I'm doing now. And, he's going to be moving into a new role as well. And then that hit me hard. And I stood back and I was like, that's why I do this. That's my meaning. So, when you can get a reaction from, and I'm sure Fernando's had the same thing with people he's managed, like you get these moments of going, I feel really good, and that whole day I was buzzing. I was like, I'm on cloud nine because of just a couple comments, and you don't realize that at the time, like what you're doing is going to have that outcome, but when it happens, you're like, cool, I feel good. So yeah, I don't know. It's an impossible question to answer, but I think everyone will have an aha moment at one point in their time, and they'll go, "That's my meaning."
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. That experimentation 100% is super important. You got to try as many different random things as you can, because you don't know necessarily what will click for you, and just being okay with doing it. And it's the act of doing it that makes it a success, not what the outcome is.
For sure.
Yeah, there's a book called Ikigai on longevity and finding the meaning of life, right? And even if many of us won't find it, very rarely will we find it in our jobs. We might have to find it inside hustles or in hobbies. We can still take from the four legs, right? So the perfect connection, the ideal connection is one that you do something that you're good at, that always feels good. You get paid for, recognized. Society needs it. It's excellent. And then there's the last one, which is you really enjoy doing. If you actually get joy out of that rounds everything else down.
Well, it's funny you say that as well, because I still help people in nutrition side and things like that, and people always will come and say, oh, what's the best diet I can do? What's the best training plan? Like, what is it best? And my answer is always the one you can adhere to. So the one you can do and you can enjoy and you can do is the best plan for you. So there's no real right or wrong answer. It's exactly what you're saying, Fernando. Is like it's those things that you just enjoy doing, and if you can do it, then it's and you like doing it, then you're going to do it. It's hard to make it that simple, but sometimes it is. Sometimes it is that simple. Yeah.
100%. Beautiful. I really want to thank all of you for the time and for preparing things and for indulging me.
Thank you,
for
Robin.
putting this together. I think it's been so nice to have these conversations.
100%.
I'm looking forward to doing more of them, and I will let you know when I do more of them. I've
Awesome.
got other things planned. I've got like I want to do like a short form podcast where it's like the world according to blank, and then I just bring random people, not like celebrities, but like just normal people, and they get like 20 minutes to share about something in their life that was, I don't know, meaningful or formative as an experience. So I'd love to have all of you on that at some point. That'll be fun.
Anytime, man. I'm always there for you. So you've got my number.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you, guys. It was really nice meeting you all. And hearing
have a great weekend.
You too.
You as well. Take care, team.
Same. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.